Välkommen till Malmo.
Welcome to Malmo. This is Full Ahead.
Hello and welcome to the Full Ahead podcast, and it's the last in the mini-series from the Ferry Shipping Summit in Malmo in Sweden. And in this edition we're going to be looking at the future of ferries and the future of ferry ports.
Yeah, because gone soon may be the days of paper tickets to be replaced by slick digital ticketing and bots answering your queries. We'll also be asking what role will there be then for we mere mortals in the future, and hearing firsthand from one of the largest ports in Greece who are aiming to go digital without losing the human touch.
But of course it's not just about tickets for trucks or travellers, it's also about ship owners and how they record their ship's emissions, how they get that to the authorities and how they ensure compliance with all the new legislation both for the ships and for the crew. And all of this done digitally.
This is the Full Ahead podcast at the Ferry Shipping Summit 2025.
We spoke to Henrik Lindqvist of Orbyt Global, who specialise in maritime connectivity and navigation.
Orbyt Global is a Greek company based in Piraeus. And what we do communication, every kind of communication, everything from OT communication to internet for crew and for pure business. And we're working with commercial shipping, ferry and cruise ships. So what we're doing is that we're actually now more into this regulation, providing emission reporting, environmental reporting, and digital logbook solutions for shipping companies.
And you've been doing this role or in this industry for 20 odd years, I understand.
Yeah, it's been 20 years of fun, actually. You meet a lot of people, nice people, interesting people, and you see all the challenges that shipping segment is facing every day.
I guess 20 years ago, emissions, were they an issue then? Can you remember?
Not really, because the maritime business was actually the last business to be regulated during the 90s, I guess, if I remember right. If you remember, the 80s was full of accidents and oil spill and etc.
Back 20 years ago, crew on a ship, once they left port, there was no way of communicating with home or with the office or anything really.
It was like being in the Stone Age. Today you have Starlink, you have OneWeb, you have all this LEO solution coming up, and combining with Radio Link and 5G and 6G coming in the near future, it's going to change the market or the shipping world a little bit.
And you say that's great for crew to be able to contact home when they're at sea, but actually the use case in terms of businesses trying to kind of send that information about the ship's emissions and all this regulation now back to shore quickly and easily.
Yeah, it's like working in an office today. Today there is no excuse at all for a shipping company to make the reporting like everybody else. But it's still a big challenge, definitely for the small shipping companies. The big ones, such the big ferry operators, they have the money and they are already there. But we have to remember that the majority of the shipping companies are the small ones, and they don't have the money and they don't have the people to work with this.
Is it a hard sell? I mean, when you approach people here today, do you have to convince them that they have to do it because legally they have to, or are they now a bit more receptive that your offer and your business is something that's useful to them?
Not really. Everybody is having a solution for it today. If you go to a shipping company today and provide them with communication or with environment reporting, they probably have a solution for that, and it's all about taking them out of the cave, and like Platon, if I'm going back to the Greek, to show them that there are new technology that can actually help them better and faster and more economic.
The whole theme of this conference this year seems to be about technology, and whether it be operating systems in terminals or on ships, and you seem to be echoing that same thing, that technology is ever more important. What about the human element? What about people? Is that kind of missed in all this?
Well, after the pandemic, we all realized that the crew is actually the people who are the heroes in the shipping world. They actually save the world. 90% or roughly are of the logistic is handled by the shipping. So yes, the crew is the most, and the human part of it is the most important.
Yeah, we met some great crew.
Always, even if the technology is there, it's always going to be the because a shipping company today with good people can never be in the market. Look at the big operators; they're all struggling to have the best people.
You're right, there seems to be a bit of a gap between the people here today and the next generation coming through, and maybe shipping is just not sexy enough. Maybe people want to get jobs in, AI or more interesting industries.
Well, you're talking about somebody who is representing a Greek company. Shipping in Greece is sexy. But I understand your question, and in the Nordic country, yes, we are struggling to get younger people to the shipping. If you look at Japan, for example, I think the shipping companies today, to give you an example, Stena Line, they realize that, and they are trying to start schools to bring people to this segment. And younger people from the schools, and just to tell them the truth that even if you go out, you will have the internet in the same way that you have at home.
Can you give us a little hint to the future, a little kind of glimpse into what your company is planning for next year? You mentioned 6G, for example. That's quite exciting, isn't it? But we've just got 5G in the UK.
Even if my brother's working within Telenor, within Ericsson, I know a lot, but I can't say anything.
Wow,
but it's definitely something that they are looking into. It's going to be a little bit faster and a little bit more safe. And definitely is coming to the market. But maybe we are talking 5-10 years from now.
Very good. Well, look, thank you for your time. I hope you have a great couple of days at the summit here, and lovely to talk to you.
Pleasure.
The podcast about ships and shipping. Podden om fartyg och sjöfart med Alistair Eagles och Nigel Thompson.
Or what about back on land? The job of marshalling loads could be made easier thanks to digital tracking. Canadian-based Brock Consulting already working in Europe, as Maddy Bosch told us.
Yeah, so I'm Maddy Bosch. I work for Brock Solutions. We're a company based out of Kitchener in Canada. We have offices across North America and then also some in the UK, employees in Hungary, Ireland, so a little bit all over the world. As a company, we work in not only ports, but aviation, manufacturing, automotive, wastewater treatment. We have a wide variety of really just logistics companies that we work with.
And what kind of work does your company actually do then? What's your kind of main bit of business?
Digitization is probably one word to sum it up. It doesn't really actually help you with what we do. In ports, that really means helping them try and move towards being more digital and getting data. In airports and aviation, we're doing baggage systems. Manufacturing, we're doing kind of helping them with manufacturing plants, the controls engineers and stuff like that. But in ports specifically, I'd say it's more terminal operating systems and then helping ports kind of move towards that for wherever they're at right now.
And on the ferry panel yesterday, I think the ferry companies were asked to rate their digitalisation out of kind of 1 to 10 about how good they are at all this stuff, and people were scoring themselves fairly low. I mean, kind of 3s and 4s and lots of work to do. You've got a background in aviation. Is the aviation industry well ahead of ferries? Are the ferry companies really that behind, or what's your view on that?
I do think aviation has a lot of things that ports can take. The check-in experience particularly, airport check-in, I don't know if you've flown recently, but it is quite smooth, seamless, very easy. But I think ports are underselling themselves. I think a lot of ports see really shiny new systems that have automated signage and there's no humans involved, and it's that's fantastic, but that's a really high standard to compare yourself against. There's a lot between where they are and where that is. And I think they're being a little bit hard on themselves for where they're at currently with digitization and technology.
Maddy, it kind of shows the international nature of shipping. We've got a Canadian person in Sweden, and one of your latest kind of installs has been the port of Rosslare, much closer to our home in the south of Ireland. What have you been doing in Rosslare?
Yeah, so in Rosslare, we've been helping them kind of go from a pen and paper operation to a more digitized, so that they have a better understanding of what's in their port, where it is, and then also helping them integrate with the shipping lines. They're a common use port. They have 5 shipping lines that sail there regularly, and they previously had a really hard time with visibility just because each shipping line has different processes at the port. They had separate systems, and so helping them tie that into into one system so that the guys in the terminal building or running operations don't have to look out the window anymore to understand what's going on out there. They can log into our system in SmartPort and see how loading's going, what's in the yard, where things are in the yard, all that sort of stuff.
And the systems we were discussing over breakfast, who gets the benefit? So installing a kind of system like yours in the Port of Rosslare, is that mainly for the benefit of the Port Authority, Irish Rail, or for the operators, or is it the passenger that benefits? Who really gets the maximum benefit from these kind of systems, or is it all three?
I mean, I think it is everybody. Obviously, the port benefits from it with the visibility and the improved performance that comes from that. One of the really big places we've seen improvements is for the haulier experience. It's now much faster for them to check in at the port. They're working on even more improvements to make it faster. And so for drivers arriving to the port, it's get out a lot faster now. Same thing for the shipping lines, so loading operations are happening more efficiently. They're getting more visibility because not only does our system get information from them, but we're sending information back to them as well as it happens. So they're getting real-time visibility in whatever system they have. So I think everybody really does benefit. It's faster and everybody gets to know what's going on.
How much are you involved in the process of designing the port? Because I know in Rosslare it's not just been about install of systems. They've done an awful lot of physical work to create new yard areas, new entrances. Do they involve companies like you in that design to make sure it all fits together, the physical side of the terminal with the electronic side of the terminal? Were you involved in that process?
Not as much. They already had the plan for what they were going to do with the construction at the port. For them, a large part of the project was actually bringing customs facilities into the port as well, so that was a requirement that we didn't really have much involvement in. But we did install a lot of cameras at the port, so helping them figure out the electrical, the networking that you need in place for that, and then doing that before the concrete's poured, because nobody wants to pour nice fresh concrete and then tear it all up again to install your cameras. So making sure they had all that in place in time.
And you did a great presentation yesterday and even cracked a joke, which was a rare bit of lightness in yesterday's presentations. But how do you find coming across to Europe? You're travelling loads by the sounds of it. You live in Canada, but you're travelling here on a regular basis. Is that not tiring? Are you not kind of fed up with this place?
No, I love coming over here. Most of my time has been in Ireland and the UK, but Sweden being here has been amazing. I think it's gorgeous. Everybody is nice. It's an easy place to come to, which is very nice. But it's also such interesting work that I don't mind. It makes it so much easier to understand how a port works when you get to go stand there and watch it, because they are really complex things, and it's not something you can really describe to somebody without them seeing it or without them being there at 3 a.m. when you have 3 ships coming in. There's no space in the yard. It's not something that can be easily put into words. You have to watch it yourself. So even I enjoy it, I love it, I'm happy to do it, but seeing the ports makes it all worth it as well.
And you've got more projects then coming in Europe in the coming months and years? You've got more things in the pipeline over here?
Yeah, so we just went live with a project in the Port of Dover. We'll be continuing to do more work with them. Hopefully we'll be working with other ports as well in the near future, but we have a lot of aviation projects as well going on in Europe right now. So we're over here a lot of the time for a variety of different reasons.
It's been great talking to you. Has it been useful coming to the summit? Has it been a useful 2 days?
For sure. It's really interesting to actually hear, obviously the digitization problems of the ports and the shipping lines and stuff like that, but the other issues they're having as well. Just helps to better understand how the ports and shipping lines are working as a whole, because what I see when I'm trying to solve our problems with digitization and things like that is a very small part of it. So actually understanding, the electrification problems, the ship-to-shore power problems and things like that has been great. And then it's also a fantastic way to meet more people. It's a great conference for that.
It's really interesting for me, the kind of international nature of shipping. We've got 2 blokes from England doing a podcast, sat in a hotel in Sweden, speaking to a lady from Canada who's installing a system in Rosslare in Southern Ireland. And yeah, it's mad really, isn't it?
It is. And also it just shows how it is genuinely a small world. It's technology, why shouldn't it work anywhere in the world? But the fact that they feel it's worth their while to come across. And also, they weren't the only ones there doing this kind of work, but there's obviously the market's there, isn't there? So of course you've got to be at an event like this to show that you're making a difference.
Yeah, and their main business is in the airline industry, and maybe that's the right way to do it, taking someone who's done it better in another industry and then bringing it into the ferry industry. So, when we talk about people doing it better, maybe they're the systems we should be trying to bring in. So yeah, really, really good to speak to Maddy.
I was looking at some of the websites of some of the different ferry companies just doing the research for this podcast, and it's interesting to see that some you could transpose budget airlines for ferry company A, and yet some ferry companies look a little bit kind of behind the curve, talking about the history of the plane. I don't think passengers, especially of a certain age, really care. They want value, they want to know when, how soon will you get there.
Anyone looking after companies' websites in the ferry industry, the first thing I want to see, and this is a bugbear for me, just give me a map of your routes.
Yes,
I want to see where you go on a little map. If I can see that on page one, I'm a happy bunny, you know. But so often it's hard to find where those routes actually are. And if passenger ages are getting older, if the average age of a person on a Ropax ferry travelling with their car is now over 50, then how do we encourage those young people? And surely the website, do we even need a website? You know, are ferry companies on Insta and TikTok, and are they doing all that stuff? Because that's where they need to be, probably.
Now, it's interesting, in Tallinn, in Eastern Europe, the port there's already adopted new ways of working. Kadri Haufe from Nortal told us a bit more about it.
Nortal is, I would say, a pioneer within smart port business. We started working with that already 20 years ago, where we did our first work in Finland. We're working for the biggest port operator over there for Steveco. And then around 10 years ago, we started our work with Port of Tallinn, which is currently considered the most advanced ferry smart port. And we're working with Ropax and Ro-Ro processes there. So everything, if you go to Tallinn, let's say you're a Ropax passenger, you're not possibly going to meet a person when you're boarding a ferry. So you're arriving to the port, your car is captured, all the details are captured, you're going through automatic check-in, all the marshalling is digitalized, and you might be getting to the ferry without ever having to, speak to a person.
So that's, when you say smart port, that's what you're kind of meaning. You're making the flow, the journey, whether you're a passenger or a freight unit, the journey from check-in to the ship as easy and seamless as possible.
Absolutely, totally seamless. We're cutting a lot of time in the process, so you can arrive very last minute on the smaller islands where we have also implemented this system. Local passengers are arriving maybe 3 minutes before departure, and they're just driving through the check-in directly to the ferry and no waiting around. That, of course, also reduces the workload involved. So there's a 75% reduction in check-in staff and in marshalling staff in Port of Tallinn. And there's also a CO2 reduction because we don't have cars idling around the terminal all the time.
So it's good for the passengers, but also good for the port and the ferry operators.
Ferry operators are probably cost-wise the biggest winners from this. And in Port of Tallinn, we're working with Tallink, Eckerline, and Viking Line. None of them can imagine their life without it, really.
Because we were impressed last time, we went to the port of Istad.
Yeah.
And the turnaround time for the fast ferry that came in was about, half an hour, maybe an hour?
Yeah.
It came in, it discharged, they went back out, as we were sort of on the bridge watching it go so quick. Obviously, for a ferry company, that's, and also the environmental side as well, that matters. But what about the passenger side? I mean, it is quite nice to talk to a human, especially if you've driven through the night, you're a bit stressed, you need to... Is that option still there?
The option is definitely there, but we can see it from the numbers. So TS Laivat, which is one of the ferry operators who implemented that, they saw almost 100% increase in the net promoter score in the time that this was implemented, going from 40 to 78. So I think people speak in their numbers what they actually prefer, and they prefer speed, they prefer no hassle, they prefer not having to think about what they have to do. If everything seems secure and you're giving directions all the time and you don't feel like you're lost in the terminal, that's really what you want.
Not all ports work like this, so presumably you're trying to extend your model across different ports in different countries?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. So we have done work with a lot of ferry operators around Europe now. Most of them are in planning stages. We have worked with Brittany Ferries in France. We have worked with DFDS in Dunkirk and in Klaipeda. We did work in Port of Hirtshals, currently finishing something off in Port of Kristiansand. Did some work in Italy in several ports. So I see a lot of interest in the port and ferry sector to digitalize and automate these processes. Things take time, of course, it's complicated, but my recommendation, I think, always is to partner up with someone who has done it, who has demonstrated results, actually, not just a nice vision, because we all can imagine what these processes could be like, but in practice it often turns out quite tricky, and it's not as easy as it seems, so you want someone who has proven that it works.
And have you any kind of figures or statistics on kind of the the commercial impact for a ferry company? Does it drive passengers towards a service? Is it a kind of path of least resistance? If it's easier to get on a ferry, do people tend towards that service rather than maybe a competing one where the check-in procedures are lengthier? Does it make a difference?
I'm afraid I don't have any, let's say, competitive comparison how it impacts the business in that way. But I guess the Net Promoter Score example already speaks for itself, that the customer experience does increase very significantly. Also, I want to highlight an example from another company that we haven't worked with, but Scandlines did a very nice trial at one point, and they were talking about that on LinkedIn, so that's where I know it from, but you can confirm it with them. I understand they did a very simple trial. They just went out to the terminal and did manual effort, simple things to make people happier and make their experience in the terminal better. They were handing out crayons, I think. Maybe they were putting on like Christmas hats and just smiling to everyone, greeting everyone through manual means. But the purpose was to increase the experience or improve the experience in the terminal. And what they saw was really a significant impact on onboard sales. So people were buying more, they were spending more, they were probably more likely to come back as well.
And that's a point that you've made, haven't you, before, about it's not just the price, and the experience. It's the experience. Sorry, it's the fact that when you go, you feel that you're a valued customer.
Yes.
The price is the same wherever booked by and large, but it's the difference that ferry company A has over ferry company B, or route A over route B. You've found that, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the check-in experience being as simple as possible. I get that. But I think there are people that still want to speak to people. So maybe being able to check in really quickly, but then get a set of crayons, that would work for me. I think I'd be delighted. So, yeah, maybe that's the best combination. A bit of people, but a bit of, really good processing and really quick processing. So, yeah, it's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the conference.
I've also got a vision now of Alistair with his crayons colouring and a QR code perhaps on the ticket.
Yeah, those crayons could come in handy if it all goes down, so hold on to those crayons. But yeah, no, brilliant talking to you. Enjoy the conference and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Sjöfolk och deras berättelser.
Maritime people and their stories.
So Tallinn, yeah, cutting edge port, doing some amazing stuff, but there's amazing stuff. It's not just about the ports, it's also about vessel design. And Anders Orgard from OSK, ship designers, based in Denmark. Really interesting to see what they're up to, the art of the possible, and maybe the art of the possible if the regulations can be changed somewhat. But also just reminds me again that we still design ships individually for each kind of company, and there needs to be more standardization. We need a 737 or an Airbus 3, whatever. We need a bit more standardization. There are too many different types of ships, and it's just madness that you think about starting a ferry company and the first thing you do is maybe design a new ship. That wouldn't happen in a trucking company or in an airline, But so yeah, standardization, but some interesting comments from Anders about ship design.
So contrary to other fuels or energy carriers, I would say, the batteries, they have the advantage that the loss from electricity to propulsion power is very limited. And that means if you compare to methanol or other energy carriers, that you have much less losses in the system. In converting methanol to propulsion power, you have to use 5 kilowatts for every 1 kilowatt you need at propulsion power, whereas for electricity you need 1.1 kilowatt of electricity to produce 1 kilowatt of a propulsion power. And that means in order for us to do the decarbonization and the electrical transformation, we need to focus on the sectors that has this ability to use electricity. And short sea shipping is ideal for that, whereas the deep sea shipping, they cannot contain that amount of energy necessary to decarbonize, and therefore batteries in short sea shipping is super important.
So kind of short sea routes, particularly in countries where you've got a cheap or maybe renewable source of energy power to get the electricity in the first place, Scandinavia being maybe a good example with both wind and nuclear power. So get that electricity onto a battery powered ship. How far can one of those ships go today in terms of crossing time?
We have developed projects, both starting with the Stena Electra from Gothenburg to Denmark, but then later with Molslinjens. We have developed vessels that can go 3 hours and 15 minutes on batteries, doing 24 knots, a 200-meter ferry. And that's by applying light ship technologies known from the fast ferry industry for accommodation, aluminium in superstructure, and then full focus on weight-saving technologies. Applying all these technologies allows us to reduce the propulsion power significantly, hull line optimization. So today, I dare to say that 3.5 hours on a 24-knot vessel with 2,000 lane meters and 2,000 passengers, 200-meter vessel is definitely possible.
But that's a concept at the moment. That's not something we're seeing on the seas at the moment, just to be clear.
That's a concept, yeah. The contracts which are in the market right now is the new builds for Molslinjen that has just been delivered from Turkey, which has applied the same technology in terms of lightweight appliances, but still is built under SOLAS with whatever it takes of safety equipment and so forth.
Got a question for you, Anders. The batteries themselves, what about the reliability and the durability of batteries, seagoing batteries? Because, I don't know about you, but I've used batteries on vehicles and devices for years. And they're okay for a while, you can recharge them, but in time they do fade away. What about ships?
Yeah, for ships we have applied life cycle analysis for many years where we quantify and data driven decisions. So what we see is that the different type of chemistries are applicable for different types of operations. So we have to make sure we take the right choices in those batteries. But just over the last 1.5 years, we have seen significant drops in the weights of these vessels with the batteries applied. And especially when we then talk about the second life of the batteries, where we apply these batteries first on board the ships and then can take them to shore for energy storage, so that we make second life of the same batteries, where we can utilize them to fast charge into our vessels and shorten the port turnaround times. That's where we see the real efficiency and the long-term application of the batteries.
But the concept design, I mean, we've been hearing today about how port turnaround times are really important. Quicker turn around the ship in port, less emissions, better for the public and whatever. A 3.5 hour ferry journey on a battery ferry, how long would that ferry have to be plugged in for then to get back to 100% to go back in the other direction?
Yeah, it's actually very similar in capacity as we see on the new fast ferries from Molslinjen. And so they have a 30-minute port turnaround time and can charge these 25 megawatts in 30 minutes. So that's the new standard for that. But that requires a battery storage on shore to ensure that we have a fast transition of electrons to on board the vessel.
So it's shoreside battery storage that's maybe charged up overnight on cheap electricity, and then when the ship comes in, it's taking that power from those storage batteries, basically.
Yeah, ferries, they have this typical operation aspect that they often operate out of remote areas where we have the shortest distance, and that's also where we have the shortage on power supplies. And therefore, applying a battery storage can support the business model of the ferry by charging when the energy is cheap, but it can also support the grid stabilization. It can support that you can slow charge during port calls and then fast charge into the vessels from the storage system when the vessel is in port. So there's a number of benefits both for the owner, for society, and the operational cost of the vessel.
And that concept of using battery storage on shore then also helps in the ports where the local grid infrastructure just can't cope with charging a ship directly. If you plugged your ship in, you would trip the local town kind of thing. But by trickle charging those storage batteries on shore, then you can kind of get over that problem as well.
Exactly. And then it has the second advantage that you don't have to dig in cables for a long distance from the transformer, which is often located in populated areas or industrialized areas to the port. So you can then support the island with whatever infrastructure is from the sea cable to the island is a limited source, but if you charge at night, you can take advantage of that capacity when it's not in use by the people on the island. It is is one ecosystem. So whenever the operational expenses are lower, of course, you can maybe reduce your ticket costs, but also electricity is a bit expensive. So I think it will just avoid pricing escalation in the future. There's not a one size fits all when we talk about fuel strategies. It has to be an energy mix of many different fuels. An example is a vessel that we're doing at the moment, which has a 5-hour crossing where we can collect 12 megawatt of power in shore. From shore charging, in the 3 hours the ship stays in port, we can charge 12 megawatt. But the vessel is spending around 40 megawatts on a crossing end to end. And that means we can take around 30% of the emissions by charging in port and supplement that into the ship's propulsion system. And that means a reduction on CO2 if it was a Swedish port with those let's say CO2 per kilowatt that applies for Sweden or Denmark for that matter, then we can reduce the emissions by 30%. Of course, if you operate out of a country where you have coal power and so forth, we should not look that way, because that's just transforming energy once more. But then let's spend energy in those regions where it's available, widely available, with reduced CO2 emissions.
As a ship designer, is it an exciting time to be designing ships, or is it a frustrating time because there are so many new rules and regulations that you have to comply with, or has that always been the case and it's a really exciting time?
Well, I've been a designer since the early 90s, so it's always been exciting times. When you love ferries, it's always exciting. But I think there's a few fundamental changes in the world today. That is that the complexity is increasing, and that allows us as top designers to explore different opportunities, but also to engage with our customers on a tonnage strategy level, which implies that we are engaged with our customers at a much earlier stage, where we can influence the tonnage strategy and have a much more, let's say, business mind discussions with our customers. And I really love that, because it sets a different discussion in the boardrooms and also allows us to exercise different options for different applications.
So you're much more involved in the kind of whole process than maybe 20 years ago. 20 years ago, a ship owner would say, I want one of these, and you would design it. Now you're really part of that whole process and showing them the art of the possible, maybe.
Yeah, it is about the art of the possible. It's about knowing where the front is and what is possible today, but also having respect for things like second-hand value and future opportunities, and what is the secondary route for the same vessel, because as was also presented, the lifetime of our assets is just increasing, and that means a fundamental change in the way we look at an asset. It has to be functional at a short term, but it also have a possible future in the second part of its life. And how do we exercise this? Exemplified by, in the old days when I was studying, a ship owner would call for a ship designed from fender to fender with a certain size and a certain capability. And that implied that he had made all the decisions before he engaged with the designer. And then you can save maybe, from technology leaps, you can save maybe 5 or 10% fuel in that aspect. But if you start to look with the operation and so on, like we did with P&O, we could save more than 40% fuel by off-the-shelf technologies, but looking at the whole holistic design approach to that differentiation of the operation. The aspects of today is that if we engage earlier, we can make quantum leaps in our design approach.
Christoph was saying, wasn't he, from Brittany Ferries, that the kind of notion of having different ferries and different routes is kind of gone. It's a romantic, I think he called it, image that passengers like to have, memories of a certain ship which they may love. Those days, though, if you want it to be cheap and on time and carry all that it can carry, that as you say, those bespoke kind of ships for a certain route, those days have gone.
Yeah, but you look at their new ship, the St. Malo, that won the award, and a real different focus on that ship, away from the kind of burgers and chips and into kind of a decent home-cooked, kind of homegrown, kind of healthy food. A bit of a risk maybe, and lots of amazing artwork, and yeah, just a different experience. So
the artwork that made me laugh the most was the chairman with onions around his
the chairman on a bike with some onions. Yeah, so
but that's okay because he's a farmer apparently. So Christoph was at pains to say that he wasn't appearing because he isn't a farmer. But his chairman was it was right that he should because he is a farmer.
Yeah, so ship design isn't just about how the hull cuts through the water and the dead weight and the efficiency. It's also about the inside of the ship and how it looks and how that experience is for the passengers, because that's what the passengers see. They don't care about the fuel consumption. They don't particularly care about the seakeeping. They care about how good the coffee is, how comfy the seats are, and how the ship looks and feels inside.
Detta är Full framåt. This is Full ahead.
And finally, as the conference drew to an end, I bumped into someone that I've known for many, many years. So we've talked about people that always wanted a career in shipping. We've talked about people that have kind of fallen into it. And Gary kind of fits in between. He was probably one of the biggest experts on North European shipping, but not actually working in it for many years. A kind of ferry enthusiast, if you like, but with such a huge degree of knowledge about onboard sales, about that ship experience, that he finally got a job doing a bit of work with Swansea Court Ferries, then heavily involved in LD lines, and for the last number of years has been working for DFDS. And yeah, interesting to catch up with Gary, who comes all the way from sunny Larne.
Yeah, I was one of those sickly children, and I didn't do a lot of sport, so I got interested in ferries because back in those days there were maybe 10 ferries sailing from Larne with Sea Link and Townsend Forest and then Pandoro, and just got interested in shipping that way to begin with. That led to me writing about ships. I worked for local newspapers, got involved with shipping magazines. That's where I first met you, Alistair, back, I remember going down to Sea Truck when it first started. And eventually, because a lot of people that I was working with said, you know a lot about this stuff, I started to get offered consultancy work.
To be honest, it was a bit more, you're kind of doing yourself down here a bit. I mean, back in the day, I think if I needed to find something out about a competitor and I couldn't ask a competitor, I could usually phone Gary Andrews, and you just seem to have a great knowledge, but you never kind of worked in the industry, and it always surprised me. So.
It all started by chance, really, in terms of a friend of mine was the purser aboard Fastnet Line, Swansea Cork. So she asked me to go down and help out, kind of help them prepare the product, and then did some work for him analysing the situation and so on. And then I was quite friendly with Christoph Santoni at LD Lines and showed Christoph what I'd been doing for Fastnet, and he was like, come and do that for us. So it started off doing like secret shopper work, which then developed into being the non-French guy looking at the marketing. And that gradually built, and then the next thing was Christoph and I were looking at how we made the France-Spain subsidised service a viable business. So we created these new routes between the UK and Spain, Ireland, France, Spain, and I basically became the route director for that.
So you went from your bedroom in Larne kind of to doing a favour for a friend, and then a route director of a, at the time, a relatively big ferry service.
Two roll-pack ships,
And now DFDS, so you've kind of gone round the patch a bit, and how long have you worked for DFDS?
Off and on for 7 years. So.
Okay. And your current role in DFDS is then what?
Business transformation lead, which means very little to most people, but it's basically project management.
When we flew into Copenhagen Airport just 2 days ago, for the first time in ages, we had to look at a camera and we had to put 4 fingers onto a little pad, and there seem to be new entry requirements into various countries now. You're dealing with that from DFGS's point of view?
Yep, I'm the project manager for the new border regulations, so that's EES, UK ETIAS. So.
And how's that going, dare I ask?
It's it's a very slow start, so at the moment it's going well, but we, as I think every ferry company, every airline, we're quite concerned that anything which is a negative customer experience is not ideal.
I mean, to be fair, I'm used to coming into Copenhagen Airport and even post-Brexit flowing through relatively quickly, and it was noticeably longer to get through those checks at least 2 days ago. Maybe it's early days, I don't know, but
it's the usual story. Too much regulation. We in the ferry industry don't like too much regulation unless it's for health and safety.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard all about these amazing terminal systems that allow people to flow through a terminal with the greatest of ease, but if you've still got to stop and have your picture taken and put 4 fingers on a pad and whatever, it's not that simple, is it?
Absolutely. So, it's I say it's not what you really want, but we're well prepared. We're informing our customers where we need to, and hopefully everything will keep flowing.
I've always seen you as a bit of an expert on onboard service. You can probably recognise a ferry from just looking at a picture of its cafeteria or lounge or whatever, but we talked a lot yesterday about kind of passenger numbers declining on ferries. People aren't using ferries as much to travel. What do we need to do on board ferries to really attract young people, particularly, back onto the high seas?
There was a very good quote yesterday from somebody. If you want to figure out where the ferry industry is going with the onboard experience, you look at what the airports are doing now. And I think that's a little bit of the direction we'll go, is less of the old style self-service cafeterias with everybody walking around with a tray of food and food that hasn't changed much from the 70s to more modern concepts. Ferries have we've been very traditional, and I think we're moving, for example, one of the concepts we've introduced is the Horizon concept on the Dover ships, where it's pizza. And it's, pizza's actually quite a healthy meal if it's done properly, where it's fresh, everything, and it's cooked to order. So that's the sort of direction we're going. And whenever we design new concepts for the English Channel, no doubt we'll see more of a push in that direction.
We talked about consolidation as well, and how ferry companies are kind of buying other companies. DFDS wasn't that long ago bought FRS, which is a company operating in the kind of Gibraltar Straits across to Morocco. How's that going?
It's a really exciting business. Passenger numbers are very good. It's one of the things about that service is it's an amazing. It's like nothing else in Europe, where you have these large streams of people who, during the summer, return back home to Morocco after working in Europe during the summer.
And it's really seasonal then. So you got really peaky demand, or?
It is, but there's a huge freight business as well. And of course, with Morocco being now nearshoring for a lot of Europe, it's got a lot of exciting opportunities.
So although the ferry market in Northern Europe might be kind of flattish, there are still opportunities to just reach out a bit further, and new routes and new opportunities further afield then?
Well, I think across Europe we're going to see continued consolidation, because also in Strait of Gibraltar, of course, Stena now own a large percentage of Africa-Morocco link. So
the big guys get bigger, and I guess we've seen that even in my own case with a smaller ferry company being bought by a bigger one. But yeah, no, Gary, it's been really interesting talking to you. Has it been useful coming to the summit for you? Yes,
it's always great for networking. It's also, there were a lot of good panel debates, a lot of interesting opinions, little bits of controversy too. Always good.
Yeah, we like a bit of interaction between ports and ferry companies. I enjoyed that bit too. But yeah, great talking to you. Safe journey back to Larne, of course, and no doubt we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Alistair.
Gary clearly has a passion about the industry that he now works within.
And amazing, even in the 2 days of the conference, to see the number of listeners on the podcast suddenly shooting up, the number of people subscribing suddenly shooting up. We've really seemed to have got some momentum. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next year with the Full Ahead podcast.
And talking of next year, the Shipping Summit itself is heading away from Northern Europe to sunnier climes to Athens next October. I think it's the 8th and 9th of October, from
8th and 9th of the 10th,
That's
so
right.
8, 9, 10. Yep,
Clever.
there we go. So as the summit in Malmo kind of draws to a conclusion, we look ahead to next year. And as we round off the summit, it was great to catch up with 2 Greek ports and the chief executives from the port of Kavala in the north of Greece and Patras across in the western side. And just to catch up with them as we head to Greece and see what their thoughts are on the market at the moment.
I am Dr. Angelos Vlachos, the CEO of the port of Kavala, which is a multi-purpose port in northern Greece, actually 170 kilometers off of Thessaloniki to the east, between Alexandroupolis and Thessaloniki. It's a port that is not widely known beyond the Greek border. However, in our perspective, it seems that more or less gradually it gets the importance, it acquires the importance it deserves, in the sense that also due to the geopolitical conditions in the broader area, our presence seems to be more vital for a series of diverse activities. not only for the ferry activities, because we are for the Ferry Summit here today, the cruise activities, which has been expanding in the area for the last months substantially, but also in commercial terms, the port of Kavala comprising, until recently there were 4 separate distinct port infrastructure. Now our entity, our company, controls 3 ports in the broader region in a distance of 70 kilometers.
We've heard there was a bit of an exchange. There was a port panel this morning which you spoke very well on, and not a heated exchange, but a kind of exchange between the ferry operators and ports over the last 2 days. Ferry companies kind of saying, we take all the risk and we take all the difficulties of building new ships and the risk on profits, and the ports just have an easy life and kind of you don't need to do too much. And I think the ports kicked back a bit today and said, no, we take risks too, and we'll build on new terminals, and once we've built that terminal it can't just sail off into the distance somewhere else. And what's your view on whether ports are taking enough of that kind of shared risk or not?
It's important to adapt a somehow balanced perspective over this delicate issue. I would say yes, I can share their skepticism that they do take risk as private enterprises, the free market. At the very same time, the ports being either privatized or under public control, they do take risks. They do take a lot of risks, and on many occasions they do not have the necessary financial support not to expand, sometimes even to maintain the existing infrastructure. Many times we tend to omit that, excluding the need for further growth and development, you have to maintain, in our days, in safe terms, above all, what you already have in your possession. Speaking also at the benefit of the broader public, for the commercial uses, whatever. So yes, to get back to the question, the ports, they do take risks. And I would say that instead of having a rivalry or some sort of struggle or this juxtaposition among us, it would be rather fruitful to be together on that and check out on every single occasion, in any case, what can be done. This can be at the level of the EU countries, this can be at the level of every country itself, or at every port, the special needs we do have, and check whether we can collaborate, we can have some sort of support granting from the EU, some sort of collaboration. So approach, let's say, identify ourselves, not in hostile terms or as being at the other side, but as parts of the same equation.
Panagiotis, Anastasopoulos, and I am the CEO of Patras Port Authority. Traditionally, for decades, to be honest, for thousands of years, we've been the gateway to the Western Europe, to Italy specifically. Some people from Patras have started their sail to go and, let's say, create some nice houses in Sicily. So we created Magna Greca there. And then, the history goes on with Rome, etc., etc. Okay. Our port has been a monothematic port. We were supporting RoPax communication between Patras and the Italian ports like Bari, Ancona, Venice. But 2 years ago we have invested a lot in expanding the RoRo support, and now we cooperate, besides Attica Group for the RoPax, we cooperate with DFDS and Grimaldi for the RoRo. Patras is connected to Italy, to 3 ports in Turkey, 1 port in Egypt and 1 port in France, and we look forward to expand our connections in RoRo support in more countries and more ports in these countries I mentioned.
And obviously your freight volumes then are increasing. What about the passenger volumes? How are passenger volumes on that bit of sea between Italy and Greece? Are they up? Are they down? Has COVID kind of affected that or not?
Totally yes, and it's not only COVID, but it's also airplane. let's not forget that our competition goes with airplane, and nowadays traveling by airplane is very cheap. They go everywhere, and even if you want to take your car with you, you can rent a car where you go in a very cheap price. So I believe that most passengers are thinking airplane is far more convenient for them compared to a sea connection.
I took the ferry myself from Italy to Greece earlier this year, and long ferry crossing, loved it, and hard to take the camper van on a plane, to be fair, but I had a great time. And I just wonder what we can do to encourage people back onto ferries. There was talk yesterday about the average age of ferry transport, people being higher and higher. And do young people in Greece use the ferries? Is it a big thing for them, or are they just getting on the planes now?
Well, to be honest, when it comes to internal connections with our islands, you know that Greece is full of islands. We have thousands of islands. Young people do use the ship. They don't use the airplane. I was referring to Patras, Italy connection. And to be honest, what we need to do and, let's say, invest more is on the experience we have on the ship. Because we're living in an era of stress, we're living in an era where there is no free time anymore, but if we invest more in the quality of life, we have to invest more on the experience given on the passengers on the ships.
I was interested in the presentation you mentioned about the changes. You just listed all the different routes you've got in a very, very busy port. We must come and have a look. But when it comes to sort of the culture of your staff, your colleagues as well, you mentioned, I think you were saying about having to change and get them to come with you as well. How hard was that?
To be honest, what we faced the previous years and we are still facing is a fear from our human resources when they hear about technology. Because technology is a fantastic tool for us, especially this time of year of era. We are living with artificial intelligence, with mechatronics, with robotics, but we have to make sure that our staff is not going to lose their jobs based on the coming of technology in everyday routine. For instance, in our port nowadays, all the administrative staff are using AI in their everyday routine. Because technology is a tool. In any aspect, it's a tool. And we have to exploit this tool in the best possible way. So what we have to do is to educate our staff that they should not be afraid of technology. On the contrary, they should exploit technology. So this is one of the biggest burdens we have in terms of implementing all those changes we said, which of course are a challenge.
And I have to ask, there has been some, not controversy, but debate at least between the ports and the ferry operators about who really takes the risk. Is it the ferry operators building their expensive ships that takes the risk and the ports are having an easy time, or is it really the ports that are taking the risk? Where do you stand on the argument? You kick back a little bit hard from the stage there, but what's your view on that debate?
Well, to be honest, it was a fantastic metaphor when I heard that ports and operators are like a married couple, and then we see the cruise ships are coming like the lover, and I would say, in these terms, I'm expecting an operator to buy me flowers after so many years. It's not happening anymore, and I will cook for them the best dinner. Well, let's make it practical. Whatever has to do with investment is a kind of risk, and we need to find the way of de-risking. So in these terms, and since we are talking about a transition and a reform, because we are talking a big reform when it comes to the shore power, to all these changes, I think we should cooperate more. I think we should discuss more. And to be honest, in one more year at this wonderful Ferry Shipping Summit, I saw ports and operators on different panels. Imagine next year we can see operators and ports together. That would be something, because that would be might be the beginning of a frank discussion. We don't trust each other, let's face it. We don't trust the operators don't trust the ports, because we haven't found the opportunity to sit on a table and discuss and start trusting each other. This is, I believe, what we lack.
So fascinating looking at how the market in Greece, from in fact 2 different ports within Greece. I learned as well 145 ports in Greece.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about the numbers and all the different challenges those ports have. But looking forward to Greece next year and hearing some more stories. What really struck me at the summit is just how many stories are out there. I mean, Nigel, I don't know how many interviews we've done, but you've probably got the stats in front of you.
25. We spoke to about a fifth of the number of people that actually attended the summit.
Yeah, and there's probably about another 25 that said, I need to come and talk to you, and we just never got around to it. We never bumped into, they were busy at the time. So, so many contacts, so many interesting stories, and it just gives me confidence that this podcast has got so much to talk about. We've hardly scratched the surface in this first kind of few months, but that international bit, to get that international kind of flavour in these 5 kind of specials, I found that really exciting.
I think the Shipping Summit organisers do a fantastic job to get that number of people at that level, CEO level, to come to a place and spend 24 hours talking about their business. I think is remarkable. And also, I think the fact that it's such a wide range of people as well, from trainees, from graduates, through to people who are enthusiasts, to developers from all over the world with their IT systems. It really shows you it is a small world, but also it's quite a fascinating community that we're now part of.
Yeah, and absolutely thank you to the Ferry Shipping Summit for the invite. Thank you for allowing us to run around and get in the way a little bit. And the Ferry Shipping Summit website, if people are interested in particularly ferry news, every Friday a newsletter comes out from them. You can subscribe on their website, and every Friday you can get an email in your inbox telling you all about what's happening in the world of ferries. So well worth doing. Thank you once again to them, and yeah, what an amazing time it was in Malmo. Thanks for subscribing, thanks for listening. My name is Alistair Eagles.
And I'm Nigel Thompson.
Detta är Full Ahead Podcast på Ferry Shipping Summit 2025. This is Full Ahead Podcast at the Ferry Shipping Summit 2025. Tack för att du lyssnar.